It took about 2 years at sea in order for sailors to fully learn the ropes, like so many phrases, a nautical term. Hence, Americans were also guilty of naval impressment during the Revolutionary War. The Continental Navy and 11 state navies did not need nearly as many sailors as the British Royal Navy did, but they started from a smaller pool, and they lost thousands of men to privateers, perhaps the only area of strength for the United States at sea during the war, and thousands more to capture by the British Navy. As a result, a handful of American naval captains resorted to impressment to fill the sailing complements aboard their ships. On the one hand, perhaps we shouldn't be surprised by this behavior. After all, that's the world that they knew. But on the other, particularly in light of what happened in the run-up to the War of 1812, it's kind of shocking to see Americans impressing Americans. It's hard to tell from the limited evidence available exactly who was being taken. It was probably some combination of the highly skilled sailors, as in the British example, and also those whom we characterize on land as neutrals, or the disaffected, or the disassociated. Maybe we should just start calling them the people of many names that were discussed yesterday. One lesson of this, to get to the panel theme, is that violence mattered. As Marcus Rediker has brilliantly shown over his career, professional merchant sailing was an international labor market and incredibly diverse. But that diversity increasingly faded away in Western navies in the 18th century. Where they had once been basically the same thing, sailors increasingly came to see warships and merchant ships as different entities. And this was particularly true during the American Revolutionary War, in which I don't think most Atlantic seafarers would have thought twice or hesitated to sail on either a British or American merchant ship. But navies, especially in this Cousins War, had more profound consequences. Another takeaway, evident in several of the papers from the conference, is how ill-formed and nascent the United States was in the American Revolution. I think we sometimes expect too much from the Revolution. This was the case with voluntary service in the Army and Navy, which was often involuntary. I want to read you recruiting instructions for the early US Navy. It says, "No indirect or forcible measures be used to induce them, sailors, to enter the service. It being important that those who enlist should feel an inclination for the service, no indirect means are to be used to inveigle them, and therefore no individual must be enlisted while in a state of intoxication, nor must be sworn in until 24 hours after signing the enlistment." The problem is that these instructions don't come from 1778, they come from 1798, 20 years later in the quasi-war against France, and by that time the US Navy truly had become a voluntary service. The country wasn't instantly formed. So much of what we ascribe to the revolution actually came later, and so it is with impressment. Sailors were caught in the middle of the strangest kind of civil war, the type that was forced upon them.